Morning everyone, I'm Sarah Griffiths for Sally G TV, and we're here this morning for the launch of our podcast, Becoming the Light from the Shadows of Abuse. And I chose that title because it's a reflection of not only who I am, but of who my guests are. And what we're aiming to do here is to share the stories, to share our stories, the stories of who we have become and the success that we've created in our lives, despite having a past that includes some kind of abuse that affected us and held us back for a very long time. So the show will be sharing the stories of different women, mostly women. I will include some men. I think as women, especially when we are in abusive situations with men, we can see men in a not very positive way, and that's not what we want. So I'm going to include the stories of some men as well. But the idea of the stories on the podcast is to really if you are currently in an abusive situation, it's very easy to think that you are stuck, that you are trapped, to feel that you are worthless and that this is where you have to stay. So I'm really hoping to bring you these stories to show you the journey of some women who started off in some terrible situations and really went through some things that caused them a lot of emotional damage. And these are the stories of how they overcame that. So I really hope that it will give you some courage, some strength, and inspire you to look at yourself in your own situation, to hear that many, many people have been where you are and have managed to change things for themselves, and not just to change things so that they leave their situation, but to go on to create real success. Now, I'm not saying that that's what you have to do. For many people, success is getting through the day without anxiety. It's creating a loving relationship. It doesn't have to be about creating a big business, leaving a legacy. It's whatever you want it to be. So all we want to do is inspire you to reach out and to follow your hopes and dreams, to follow your heart and understand that you are worth it and that you are enough. And whatever you want for your life is worth pursuing. So that tells you a bit about the podcast in general. It tells you why we're here and what we're hoping to achieve. So let's move on to today's guest. I'm absolutely thrilled and delighted to have her on the show today. She is quite a household name, and you may have heard of her, Suzy Batiz. And if you haven't, I'm going to put my glasses on. I don't want to get this wrong, so I'm going to tell you exactly what Suzy does and what has been said about her. So the past traumas that she's overcome: she's been bankrupt twice, she's suffered sexual abuse, domestic abuse, and had an attempted suicide. So when I say that she's overcome a lot, that's a lot. It says that she's been building and running her companies for the last 13 years. And as we're recording this now, we're at the COVID-19 virus lockdown. And she says she's taking that time, she's taking time out to just deeply evaluate where she is and where she wants to spend her time in the world. And I'll read you her bio so you understand more about her. So it says, Suzy is a serial creator and an expert in entrepreneurial intuition. And she built an empire by challenging the societal norms after rising from life's lowest lows by following an alive idea. And we'll get her to tell us more about that. She's best known as the creator and CEO of a company called Poo Pourri. And it's the all-natural, before-you-go toilet spray, and a game-changing household cleaning line called Supernatural. And today, Suzy teaches entrepreneurs to tune into their intuition and to turn on their body intelligence to achieve a naturally abundant flow state in life and business. So that's the information I have about her, but without any further delays, I'm going to ask Suzy herself to introduce herself and tell her in her own words, to tell us where she has come from and how she got to where she is today, so that we can see and be inspired by that transition, where she was and the person that she's become, which is what this podcast is all about.
Hey, I'm Suzy Batiz, the CEO and founder of Poo Pourri and Supernatural, the mother of those companies, I call it, because they're actually living dynamic organisms. And I'm here talking with Sarah. I'm so excited, my hypnotherapist.
And I'm so excited to have Suzy here because I know how amazing she is. And I know what an incredible story she has and the journey that she's been on. And at the end of the day, the point of this whole podcast series is for us to share our journeys, to help and inspire other women, even other men who might be stuck in situations that just don't serve them, and also experiencing so many negative feelings about themselves because of things that they've been through in the past. And I know, Suzy, that you've been through so much of that yourself, and yet you've moved on to become this beautiful human being, creating this incredible life for yourself, and just being such a positive influence on so many people around you. And I just think it's wonderful for people to be able to see and to experience that. So I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about who you have become. We want to know who you are now, and then we'll look at the journey.
Yeah, let's see. Who have I become? Well, that's an interesting question, right? Which aspect of myself? I'll tell you, one of the things I'm most proud that I've become is that I feel whole and complete within my being for really the first time in my life. There were so many times in my life where I felt so fractured and broken, honestly, and unworthy, and really, I felt, yeah, like injured, like deeply, deeply injured and in pain. And now I just feel happy. I wake up every single day. I feel happy. I'm joyous. I live this amazing life. You know, I have this amazing couple of companies. I just got listed as Forbes, one of the richest self-made women. And what I'm most proud about that is not the financial aspect, but really breaking generational poverty. And even beyond generational poverty, breaking the poverty within my being, because what I know is when they say the richest woman, that I'm talking about true wealth, and that it's great to be listed on some financial scale, but it would feel like nothing if I didn't have the wealth that I have within my being. And that is happiness and joy and contentment within my own skin and my own person. You know, that to me is true wealth. So, you know, it's funny, I spent the beginning of my life really pursuing, thinking that if I made a lot of money, I was going to be whole and complete. And now I've made a lot of money, but I am whole and complete. And I know that the money is not the thing. You know, I often say if I just had a backpack and walked out the door right now and that's all I had, then I'm going to be great. And I truly know that. That to me is who I am. And my desire is in sharing any part of my story is so that someone else can maybe catch a little glimpse of hope or inspiration and within their own life. In the past, I remember listening to like Zig Ziglar and Les Brown, and there are all these motivational speaking men. They were all men, right? But I often say they were like keeping my nose above water. You know, it's like I could be like, okay, I can go on one more minute, one more day, just by knowing that someone has overcome something, or that there's someone else out there that's holding kind of this line. And one of the greatest honors is being able to be interviewed like here with you, and to hopefully touch someone in a way that will wake them up to their true self. And that is because we are not our circumstances. We are not limited by any life circumstance that we have. Like, I know that is that you can not only overcome it and just be neutral, but you can actually create the completely opposite life, which I'm experiencing now.
And in those few minutes, you have already shared so much wisdom. I imagine anyone listening is completely mesmerized. And I just love what you touched on about being whole and complete.
Yeah.
Because so many people who, as you said, feel broken from something in their past, they are actually given the impression by the medical profession that you cannot become whole and complete,
Yeah.
that you cannot totally overcome this. And those of us that have done the work, have done the journey, we know it's just not true. And what you're doing just in the first few minutes here, you're giving people hope where I think there's a lot of despair. So thank you so much for the way that you just shared that. It was so inspiring, and just this image of being whole and complete, and the abundance that comes from that, as you say, is not financial. It's about the person.
Right. And,
Fantastic.
and just a part of that, whenever you talk about like that sometimes people say you can't overcome, is at one point I was on a antidepressant on Prozac for 7 years, and I was diagnosed with clinical depression. And the doctor actually told me that I would have this for the rest of my life.
Right.
And I believed that for 7 years, right? It was like, well, this must be, my dad was bipolar and he was depressed, so this must be the way my life's going to be. And that wasn't true at all.
No.
I'm the furthest thing from depressed.
And this is so dangerous. And
Yeah.
I know that I personally work with so many people who have been told, as we just said, that this will always be.
Yeah.
And it gives you nowhere to go.
No.
If you think that this will always be, how are you going to even work on trying to get yourself out of it if you've been told by a medical, someone in the medical profession, that this will always be? You just take that on board, you believe it, and you believe this is your life, and it just spirals downwards because of that. We have to stop giving people nowhere to go.
Yes.
You know, it's very dangerous, it's very wrong. And the interesting thing about bipolar, just to touch on this, is at the moment there is a huge realization that so many people that were diagnosed with bipolar actually have complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
So not only are they taking medication for something they don't have, but their complex post-traumatic stress disorder is not being treated. And this is a huge realization at the moment.
Yeah, there's an actress here, Anna Lynn McCord. She was like on 90210 and a couple of things, and she was diagnosed as bipolar. And she had done some work on having dissociative disorder.
Sure.
And I asked her, I said, do you consider yourself bipolar now? And she said, no way. So she's like, I'm just not. It's like, I thought I was because my dad was. And now what I realize is I'm not depressed at all, nor am I manic. So yeah, she might be a good one to interview later too. She's great.
Oh, yeah, we'll have to ask her. But let's carry on with your interview. So now people have got a very clear idea of who you are. Now, this image of being whole and complete, and you just, you radiate good health and this confidence and this love of life, which is fantastic. But so let's show people the journey. Let's tell people what it was like before, why you were diagnosed with depression, why you had all these problems in your adult life. So let's go back. What was your childhood like for you? Where did this begin?
Yeah, I began my life. My dad was a bipolar. Well, he was, diagnosed bipolar later in his life, but he was a rageaholic alcoholic. My mother was depressed and on pain pills. And I grew up with my childhood. One of my first memories was kind of cooking at a stove. I can remember cooking at a stove. And what that really told me later after, a lot of my therapies and healing is that from a very young age, I felt responsible. Like I had to be the adult in the room. So my childhood wasn't filled with a lot of childhood play the way most people's are. At 10 years old, like I remember, just all the time that they would just get in these horrible, horrible fights, raging, screaming. And I would just sit in the hallway frozen. I had to have my bladder operated on when I was 8 because I couldn't pee. Like, that's how much I held in. Like, I physically held things in because I thought if I could just stay frozen and still enough that somehow the chaos would stop, you know? And my parents got divorced when I was 10 years old. And I remember being happy. Like, I was like, thank God it's over, right? So my mom and sister and I will be able to go live and be happy. And that right there tells you how much dysfunction there was when you are happy. And I grew up without, you know, a lot of money. We were poor from what, you know, we would consider today. And my mom left. She met my stepfather, who I did not like when I first met him. But they broke up, and my mother was depressed in bed for a week crying. And I talked her into getting back with him because I realized I didn't want to take care of her, that I was going to have to, right? And I didn't know how at 10 years old. So she got back with him. And, you know, less than a year later, I started being molested by my stepfather. And that went on until I was about 16, sexually molested. And then I got a job when I was 15. I knew if I could make I thought if I could make money, I can get out of the house, right? So I started just working. It ended up that I was the youngest store manager as a high school senior. I was the youngest store manager in a company of a huge store like a Ross or a TJ Maxx now. I don't know if you know the stores, but yeah, huge store. And here I was going to high school and managing a store like that because I could handle, I know, it's crazy, but I just knew that somehow I could get myself out, or I thought I could. So I got married when I was 18 to get out of the house. I was married, bankrupt, and divorced by the time I was 20 years old. Yeah, I had my first bankruptcy. I decided to buy a bridal salon, and it had some bad inventory, so I did that. I tried to kill myself when I was 21 and attempted
Tell us
to.
more about that.
Yeah,
I did more about that because that to me, like there's such a lot here that you've spoken on that are kind of stories in themselves.
Yeah.
But you know, when someone says, I've been there myself, I have my own story, so I can relate to this. When someone says that they nearly committed suicide, or they were thinking, or they were on the edge, we know that that is when all hope is gone. People think about killing themselves when they are in absolute despair.
Yeah.
So how did you get to that? How were you feeling at that point? What was it that made you so despairing that you would think of that?
I was in my first marriage and had met what ended up being my second husband. And I was in this middle ground where everybody hated me. You know, my family hated me, and everybody hated me that I had, was leaving one marriage, going to another. And I really didn't have any coping skills or knowing how to, what it really ends up, what I've unpacked in therapy is I was such a people pleaser that I was willing to kill myself because I didn't want so many people mad at me, right? Because they were everyone that was close to me was angry at me. So I took a bottle of Tylenol and ended up in the hospital for 3 days taking this really horrible antidote. And it ended up working. So it was a 50-50 chance whether it was going to work or not. And I ended up living. But then I go off with this guy, charismatic second husband, who ended up being abusive.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, it was the point to where I didn't think there were any other options. It's like that was the only option, was to take myself out because I didn't know how to get out of the situation or anything.
Yeah, and it's very interesting what you said about not having any coping skills.
No.
Because this is the pattern that runs through children that experience childhood abuse. They are not taught the skills that they need to be adults. Plus, they don't emotionally develop. It's like you said, that having this frozen, this fear, just to have your bladder removed because you are so frozen. And this just tells us something about how trauma and the emotional impact of trauma, how it affects the body.
Yeah.
You know, how it affects all of us, not just emotionally. And clearly it did a lot of emotional damage because you're on this, it sounds like you've got this toxic relationship with yourself and with other people. To be a people pleaser to the degree that you will kill yourself because you think you're making others unhappy,
Yeah.
that's extreme, but I can see where it came from. You know, it was your way of surviving. You know, you had to be all these things, all these unmet childhood needs. But yeah, just what you said about not having the coping skills, not knowing anything about life, relationships, how
Yeah.
to live, how to be a whole and complete person,
No, I
because
had no
obviously
idea.
you weren't one.
No,
No.
no. I was very fractured and broken. And then I just went straight to this, another man that I thought was going to save the day, and he ended up, I really loved him. And I was pregnant with our first son. And the first time he hit me, I was hungry. We were traveling and I was hungry because I was pregnant. And I woke up and I was like, I need something to eat. I had low blood sugar. Like, I need something. If it's a cracker, like anything. And he got really angry because he didn't want to go get something to eat. So I was going to walk out the door to go try to find something. And he just kicked me and broke my tailbone. Um,
Wow.
yeah, which, that was the first time he hit me. And then I was just like, and then what would happen is he said, oh, how could I do that? I love you, how could this happen? And I said, okay, and then it just escalated, getting worse and worse and worse. But I often think back, I'm like, can you imagine having a broken tailbone? And he drove a Corvette at the time. He also had money, so it's like he was rich, and having to get in and out of that Corvette with a broken tailbone, also deliver a baby with a broken tailbone, was not fun. But over the course of over my pregnancy, he, would say gone for a couple days at a time, come back. We'd get into these really horrible fights. He would the physical abuse just kept getting worse and worse. And what was really worse, Sarah, than the physical abuse was the mental abuse,
Yeah.
psychological. Like, he would tell me, God, it still gets me to this day. He would say, I dug you out of a ditch in Arkansas. Like, he would come up and like put me with his chest and he's like, you're nothing. I dug you out of a ditch in Arkansas. Like, you're trapped.
Right.
And
So the
I
important thing about this is you already had all these feelings of low self-worth. This
yeah,
is important to mention because some people listening to this will say, well, when he hit you for the first time, why did you find that acceptable? Why didn't you leave? And we have to understand how the human mind works and the damage that was done to you, and that you were in this situation already with these feelings of no self-worth at all. As you say, you were completely broken. And here is a man who knows that. He knows that you're vulnerable.
yeah,
He knows that he has all the power. And he is just completely taking advantage of that. And then mentally and emotionally confirming what you think you already know,
yeah,
what your childhood perception of yourself has already been. He is confirming. So you accept it because you
totally.
think it's all you're worth. You
Yeah.
think it's all you deserve because it's all you've known. It's where you came from.
It is.
So,
And
yeah,
I also thought it was my fault. So
yes,
I just kept thinking, if I could be better or do something better, then this would stop. So
sure.
he would always come back and, be crying, how could I do this? And I would forgive him over and over and over again, to the point where, I mean, the abuse got really, really, really bad, to the point where, he would take, back then we had phones on the wall and we had one car. He built a house up on the mountain, so it was a typical isolation.
Isolation. I was just
Out,
thinking that.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
isolated. So he would take all the phones off the wall, lock them in the trunk of the car, the one car we had. He would beat the shit out of me and then leave for like sometimes even a couple of days with, you know, two kids by myself. And the abuse got so bad where, you know, like he would just smash my head like down in like down in the you know, like a puddle of water in our driveway. And he broke pool sticks over my back when I was pregnant with my second son. So it wasn't like I was getting slapped. Like this was really hardcore physical abuse. And there was one point to where I started losing it. Like I really believed him when he told me I was a piece of shit, you know, like I can get teary right now because I really believed him. I really believed it was my fault. And I remember
Just buying into the story,
oh yeah,
buying into the story of who you thought you were, because
yeah,
this gets deeply ingrained. It's
yeah,
very hard to see yourself as someone else when you seem to have so much confirmation. Like
yeah,
everything that has happened in your life has confirmed what you have thought you have known since a very early age. And
yeah,
it becomes your reality. And
yeah,
it's important for people listening saying, well, why didn't you do something about this, to understand who you were at that time? And you thought that you deserved this and you thought that it was your fault. And there are a lot of people listening who will be able to relate to this. So thank you. Thank
you're
you so
welcome.
much for sharing so much and being so real and honest and open. I think
Thank
it's what
you.
really helps people.
Yeah,
So
and there,
where did it go from there?
yeah, so there was one at the very end of my relationship with him, we would fight and I would go lock myself in the closet, and he collected AR-15s, these big kind of automatic weapons. And he would sit with those lined out on the vanity of the bathroom as he was sitting on a chair, just, you know, like telling me what a piece of shit I was. And when I came out of the closet, like he was going to kill me. Like, so
Wow.
one of the reasons I didn't leave is because I truly believed that he was going to kill me. You know,
Right.
he would tell me, oh, they're going to find you in a ditch somewhere, you know, and I'm going to have the kids. And I knew there's no way I could leave my children. That wasn't an option. And I'll tell you what happened is I woke up one morning, Sarah, and my I was completely dizzy. Like I couldn't even I didn't I had no I thought I was going crazy. So I called a psychiatrist. And I don't even know the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist back then because I had no concept of therapy, right? Nobody had ever told me
Yeah.
anything, right? So I just remember calling and I just said, I need help. And I go and talk to him, and I talked to him I had an hour appointment. And he kept asking me about my husband. And I was getting angry. Like, why do you keep asking about him? Because if I can fix myself, then everything's going to be okay, right? That's truly what I believed. And finally, I could cry right now, something just broke open inside of me. And I started telling him everything that was happening. And I wish I knew his name. I'd love to, you know, but anyway, and I had a 1 hour appointment and I stayed there for 3 hours.
Right.
And at the end of the appointment, because my ex-husband used to tell me I was crazy, and I said, when do I get to come back? And he said, you don't need to come back. And I said, what do you mean? I'm not crazy? And he said, no, you're more sane than I am. He said, you don't need a psychiatrist. You need a coach. You need to get the hell out.
Wow.
And
What a
somehow,
moment.
yeah,
What a moment. So how long ago was that?
gosh, it was many, many years ago. It was 30, 29 years ago,
Okay.
29 or
Well,
30 years ago. So yeah, so I went and I saw attorneys in town, and I just snuck out and saw like 3 different attorneys, and they all said, oh, you're not going to keep your children. Back then we lived in a small town. His family had a lot of money, and they were like, yeah, it was a small Kentucky town. They're like, there's not a chance in hell you'll get your kids. And so I was stuck. And one attorney said, the only option you have is to move out of state and live there within that length of time. And then you can file for divorce in that state where they don't have power.
Okay.
So I had to do a real, like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Sleeping with the Enemy, but I had to do one of those escapes.
Okay.
There was a moment to where people would always say that that we were drug dealers, and I would just laugh because I'd never seen drugs in my life. I was like, oh, sure, we're big drug dealers. Well, my husband at the time had taken a trip to Texas, and he calls me from Memphis, and he was in jail. And I said, for what? And he goes, I got arrested. And for what? It ends up, there's more. This will be a part of a series someday online, you know, on TV. But he had been arrested for drugs. He had $10,000 cash, a pound of cocaine, and a gun.
Wow.
And I was 25 years old. I had 2 children. And I remember thinking, this is my moment, right? So I go down to Memphis. I hire this drug attorney. I get him out of jail. And the whole time when we're coming back, I said, we need a fresh start. Like, we need to move to Memphis. This is where your trials are going to be. So I convinced him to move to Memphis. And I immediately found an attorney. I said, how long do I have to live here to file for divorce? He said 6 months. I said, 6 months to the day. I want you to file for divorce. Here's what's happening. And that's how I ended up with my children.
This is just so incredible. And I think it's important for people to realize that for so many of us, there is that moment, that realization where this is your moment to do something.
Yeah.
And it takes courage, because you were still the person you were. You still thought all this was your fault, etc. You still thought that you were worthless and nothing. But somehow, from somewhere, comes this moment, this person. We all have someone in our lives who totally changes our lives at some point. And for you, it was this psychiatrist. But what I want people to understand is you weren't suddenly a different person. You took this step. You dug deep. You found the courage. You didn't know what was ahead. You were dealing with a powerful family, a dangerous man, in this amazing situation, and yet somehow you found something within yourself to say, this is my moment, I'm taking it. That's just incredible. That in itself really speaks to people about what is possible when people think they cannot forge another life for themselves.
Yeah.
That's just
amazing. I was 25 years old with 2 children. So I was young, and I was the same woman. The only difference is, Sarah, in that, you know, if I didn't have my first son, like I'm pretty sure I would have, you know, I definitely would have tried to kill myself again. But after I had my child, I knew that there's no way, right? I knew that I had to be there for them. So that gave me some sense of hope. Not that you shouldn't have children for that reason. And I didn't have a child. It was the first child was an accident, but it gave me something to hold on to that was more than myself. And I'll loop back the story in a little bit later forward where a similar thing happens. So anyway, I ended up, long story short, kind of couch surfing, homeless for a bit, because he ended up finding out I'd hired an attorney. At about 6 months, I got evicted from my condo. There was a cute guy that I had worked with that we were flirting. I told him I need help. He says, let's get an apartment. And I'm like, sounds like a great idea. So then I end up.
Here we go.
Yeah. So then I end up with my ex-husband, my third husband, who we were together 26 years. And he's really great. But I still, during this whole time, Sarah, thought that money was going to get my way out. Now, during that, we had a child together. So we had my third child. I had postpartum depression. That's when I was diagnosed with severe clinical depression. And I was going to have to be on antidepressants for the rest of my life. So I had just
succumbed. So how old are you here? You're what, 26?
I was 30 years old.
You're 30 years old.
Yep.
And here this is what the medical profession does. They tell you you're clinically depressed. You're going to be on antidepressants for the rest of your life. Yes. So here you are at the age of 30, looking ahead, going, this is my life. The way
This is
I
it.
feel about myself now, the horrible way that I feel, everything that I think and know, that's my life.
That's it. Yep.
How do you move on from there?
You know, there were points to where it took I could cry right now. It took every ounce of energy that I had to just get out of bed and brush my teeth and get the kids off to school. You know, like
Yeah.
such extreme will to just live, you know?
Yeah.
But I knew that I had to. So, you know, but I really was like a zombie. I had just I had two things. I knew I just was like a zombie, like, okay, this is it. This is my life. And then the other thing was, I thought, well, if I could still make enough money, then I can actually feel some sense of worthiness, right?
Okay.
So I was also working and then had side hustles and businesses and always this really aggressive, desperate pursuit for something to fill myself, right?
That
Um,
void inside,
yeah.
not knowing at the time that it was an emotional void and you can only fill it from within,
Yes, that's
which is
it.
what you've discovered.
Yeah, and then the next thing that happened was I filed my second bankruptcy when I was 38 years old. I had invested everything into a .com, and the stock market crashed. And then, Sarah, that was another suicidal time of my life when I really I had nothing. You know, I say what's worse than losing everything is losing everything and realizing that you don't literally have anything, because I really didn't even have a God at that point. I had given up on even some sort of a higher power.
Yeah.
Not that I was an atheist. It's just that I used to pray every night to God to not let my sister be molested and that I could handle it. And then when I found out that my sister was molested also, that was a big betrayal in my mind. So I turned my back on any sort of higher power.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I can relate. I can understand what you're saying though with a second bankruptcy because you're already broken within yourself. That didn't go away. You were still living and working with that. So not only do you have nothing in yourself, but you have nothing. You have no money. You have nothing. So on both counts, you have nothing. So how do you start from there? Was this a catalyst moment? Was there a defining moment when? Yeah. So tell us about that. What happened?
yeah, well, I had started, so in between that, I had this hypnotherapist that I went to
Okay.
once. It's so funny, this theme's coming back. And he told me, he said, the problem is you have no meaning in your life. And I said, what are you
Right.
talking about? I have kids. And he said, no, you don't. So he gave me Man's Search for Meaning from Viktor Frankl, that book. And I read it and I started studying like religions and metaphysics. And I went on kind of a spiritual sabbatical, but to the point where I had given up all control in my life, where I was looking at astrology and numerology and feng shui, and I would turn my bed a different direction every month. Like I had no internal power, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't make a phone call unless the time was right. The numerology added up to a good number. Like completely had given away all my power. I was powerless,
Yeah,
truly.
so you were looking for all the answers outside of yourself,
All of
when
them outside of myself.
all of the answers are actually inside
Yeah.
yourself. And they're not just inside you, they're inside anyone who is listening. Your answer is inside you. Everything you need is already within you. You just don't access it at the moment. But for anyone who has done this kind of journey, where we get back to is, as you say, when we know that we've healed is when we are whole and complete within ourselves.
Yes.
And that all comes from within. It's not about external. We might have people that help us, but it's about us. It's about you. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love this image of having given away everything. So you couldn't move forward. There was no way of healing, no way of developing, because the outside stuff is not the answer. And that's the big problem that addicts have. They look for something outside of themselves to fill the void, and it can only be filled internally. So how did you go about discovering that? How you obviously you filled it now. How did you go about filling this void?
Yeah, so one of my friends was a feng shui expert, and she had told me we had moved in this house. My ex-husband at the time I didn't want to move in the house. He wanted to, and she told me, oh, this house is death and destruction to you, which was more fuel on this fire, right? And she said, do not go in this one room and of the house because this is the worst. And I was so done that it was literally that moment where I went into that room. I literally got down. This is another teary moment. I got down on my knees and I just told God, like, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to kill myself because I have children, but you need to get here and freaking, put all cuss words in there. You need to come take me because I can't do this anymore.
Right.
So then, the next day I had Byron Katie's book, Loving What Is, blaring at me at a bookstore. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, who could love this? Like, I'm in a big pile of shit.
Ah.
And I read it 2 weeks later. I was at her workshop and I walked out just free for the first time in my life. I was drinking, Sarah, a big bottle of Yellowtail wine a night, right?
Okay.
And smoking pot. Like I had I don't know if I was an alcoholic, but I definitely at 5 o'clock needed a drink, right?
So the external substances to fill the internal void.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important what you said there, because so many people who have just been taught that they are not enough. They feel that they are not enough. And this, what you said here, I wrote it down, this feeling of who could love this? I'm a big pile of shit.
Yeah.
And this is what people feel. They feel unlovable. And feeling unlovable and rejected and disconnected, it is the root cause of so many of these issues. And it's when people learn that this is not true. Of course you are lovable. You always have been, you always will be. And it's that uncovering and that discovery that is the game changer. So you said you got free. How did that happen? You said you suddenly felt free.
Yeah, what I realized is that I was in a real serious cycle of being a victim. And I know this is going to get a little, this could be a little controversial or touchy, but, I had a huge victim mentality.
Okay.
That life was against me. It wasn't for me, and I was always getting screwed over and over and over again. And Byron Katie actually helped me with the abuse. Is what happened is I started realizing at some point, even though I was making choice from a not healthy mind, I still was making a choice. And once I started realizing, because she was like, okay, so your husband hit you the first time. I'm like, yeah. And she's like, you didn't leave. And I'm like, no. And she's like, and then he hit you again. I'm like, yeah. And you didn't leave. And said, no. And she said, if you had a tiger and you put your hand in the cage and the tiger bit you the first time, and then you put your hand in there again, and then the third and fourth and fifth, she goes, at what point is it the tiger's fault? Right.
Okay.
And somehow that started waking me up to, even though I didn't make the choice or have the healthy mind that could make the choice, that I was subconsciously making a choice, right?
Yeah.
So that just started breaking me free a little bit. It was like I started feeling empowered a little bit in myself rather than being such a victim. I was like, wow, okay. And that does not condone, right? But it's like, I knew he was a tiger. I knew he was an abuser, right? So
Yeah.
at some point, I was clear with that. And just slowly, I just started unchunking some of that and started slowly getting my power back. As I was doing also, I started doing therapy and and then I started journeying with plant medicines
Ah,
and I,
another story in itself.
yeah, I very aggressively, it's like I needed that first chunk of myself back. And then
Yeah,
the past really 18 years has been a reclamation story, me reclaiming parts of myself. The reason we work together is I still notice life will present me with something. I'm like, oh, what's that? It's like I'm slowly been putting this, Humpty Dumpty back together again of this person to where I feel whole and complete. But there were points to where I was just so broken, but once I would get a little chunk back, I got excited, like, hold on, that's a piece of myself back. And
well,
then
you've got to build it. You've got a foundation then, haven't you? You've got a building block. It's like putting the blocks back till you build what you want. It's all the pieces that you need to make that. And I
yeah,
think it's really important what you said here about understanding. This is such a big word, and I use this a lot with people. Understanding that you have a choice. And
yeah,
we can all look at the things that have happened to us and say, oh, yes, but you don't understand. I'm this person and I'm this. And yes, I know that so many people are not the person they want to be, and they are making choices from this unhealthy mind. But the choice you make from the unhealthy mind is to stay with what doesn't serve you.
yeah,
And what you can do is choose to change that, choose to recognize that as you did,
yeah.
choose to see the tiger. I
And,
just love that.
yeah, and
Choose
no one ever told me I had a choice. Like I would
permission.
I would call my mom and I would tell her what was going on, that, I was in this really severely abusive relationship, and I would say, how do I know when to leave? And she would say, when you don't have to ask me that question anymore. That's the advice I got. And I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
okay, I'm stuck here, right? I didn't even know I had a choice until the psychiatrist said, you need to leave. I was like, oh, yeah, like I need to leave. This isn't going to get any better. It's
Well,
like
what
I
he did,
woke up.
he gave you permission to choose
Yeah,
you.
totally. Yeah,
And this is so much of the work that we do. And I hope for anyone listening, when they hear this, you have permission to choose you. You always have permission to put you first. This is your choice. And if you hear this and you choose to reject it or to keep things as they are for whatever reason, that's still your choice. You
yeah,
have permission to choose differently,
you
as
do.
you clearly did.
Yeah.
I love the way that you went on this journey and you tried so many things. So the companies and the life and the success that you have now, when did all that start? Because that's a big leap from where you were. That's what some people won't be able to just comprehend, where you've got to.
Well, as I really have unwound this a lot and really gone back in my own inquiry, like how did all this happen and how did I get here? What I really discovered is that really your internal world, your external world is a reflection of your internal world.
Uh,
So, yeah, right. So I
yeah,
was so broken and such a victim from a young age that I kept recreating that over and over and over again. So, as the parts of myself have come back, I've been able to create a different life. Um,
right.
because I'm operating from, we could just go psychologically. I'm operating from a more balanced mindset, right?
Yeah,
From not being so broken. But also, if we want to get really kind of metaphysical, it's just the direct reflection of an internal state, a state of being.
yeah. And the way that I always summarize this really simply for people is it is absolutely 100% fact that your external success in anything depends on your internal transformation.
Yes,
Because as you change, what you create and what you give out and what you allow and what you accept changes too.
that's it. So
So you,
that's why we work together, right? Because
yeah.
I've done a lot in the business world and success, and I've been dating a little bit, as we've been working on that and realizing, like, hold on, how did I attract this, right? So here's another nugget of exploration, another nugget of healing that we can go through, so I can create something differently.
Yeah, and that's so important for people to realize that it's very easy to blame our external circumstances and situations, but we are such a force within them, and we have the power to change everything when we change ourselves. That's really what this is all about.
So anyone that knows me is I do work hard in business. But I work equally as hard on my internal being. I mean, I don't think anyone, works harder. I don't very meet people. Like, I really, anytime I'm shown something, I take deep dives into what is this, right? So that I can just really continue putting those pieces of myself back together again. And I know that based on what I'm experiencing is that reflection. So it's like, if I don't want to experience that, I don't try to change I do try to change the outside sometimes, like with my ex-boyfriend, but then eventually I go, hold on, this has to be me.
What a great place to be, where you realize that it all comes back to you, and that you are influencing everything. And it's such a shame that I think people don't realize the value of investing. People almost feel bad. They feel guilty for wanting to invest in themselves, for needing to invest in their emotional well-being and their mental health. They're kind of like, well, shouldn't I just be okay? No, because you're a product of your environment. You're a product of your upbringing. You're reacting to what happened last year, in the last few years. And it's okay to fix this, just like it's okay to fix a broken arm or anything that's wrong with you. But when it comes to the emotional well-being, people are so hesitant, and they just do not understand that it affects and reflects on every area of life.
It does.
Look at the success that you have created when you started to discover that. Just like this, flow, I guess, that started to just come from you and create something completely different. And I know that's not just in your business. I know that's in your personal life, your relationships. Absolutely everything is completely different because of who you have become. And it's an important journey.
It is. Yeah. Thank you. And, we can always, no matter what we've done in the world, like, I've made amends that, I puke in a bucket, telling secrets and things that I used to have as secrets. And I don't have any secrets anymore. We can always clean up whatever even we've done. So there's two things. There's being the victim, but then there's also really being the unconscious perpetrator, the one that really hurt, because you hurt when you're hurt, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of those things is, of course, my children, just you work with, a couple of my children, one of them for sure. And my agreement with them is I can't change anything about the past. And if I could go back and do your work, I would do it. What I can do is listen to anything you have to say. And I'm here, and to apologize for anything that you feel that I need to. I 100% am here for that. But also, I've made an agreement with my children that I will pay for any amount of therapy or, personal development that they want to do for the rest of their lives, because it's their work to do. I'm really clear with that. I wish I could go do it, but I can't. Our work is our work. No one else can do it for us.
And there's a couple of important things in there. And I love what you've done, and I think it's so important that when we realize that as parents, as mothers, we brought up our children when in some way we were broken and damaged, and we were dealing with our own things, and we were not the parents that we wanted to be. I applaud people who can say, yes, I was the parent I wanted to be, because I know that I wasn't. And I can look at it and say, well, it was because of this. And yes, it was, but that doesn't negate that I wasn't who I wanted to be, or the effect that it had on my children. And just like you, my boys are 23 now, and I have gone through this with them, where I have owned the mistakes that I made, being totally honest and open with them, and said, because I am mortified. I am so desperately sorry.
Yeah.
Same thing though. I can't change what it was. I can feel desperately sorry about it, but what I can help you do is change the future.
That's it.
I can help you with what you need to do to undo any damage that I might have done.
Yeah.
And you move into a different place with them then. This place of forgiveness and acceptance and support. And I think what you've said there is absolutely beautiful. And it's important that we realize that not only were we hurt, but because we were hurt, we also hurt our children. And we need to recognize that, and we need to own it and help them now with who they have become, and help them get to who they want to be. That's been a huge thing for me as well. So it's lovely to hear you say that, because I think sometimes we get caught up in ourselves and we miss the damage that we've done to other people.
Yeah. I'm still, working on it. Just last year, I made a list of every employee I ever had, and I called 23 people and apologized to them for how I was, and how I felt as a leader. It was really, really good. I'm still doing my work. It's like whenever something pops up, it's like it's never too late. That's what I want people to know. Like, it's never too late to clean up anything that you've done.
And that was healing for you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and for them, it was healing for everybody, but it's super healing to go, I forgive myself, and,
Have compassion.
yeah.
Have compassion for who you were.
And also the difference is when you had the conversation with your son and when I'm having the conversation, I'm knowing that I'm not that same person anymore as well.
And they know it as well.
Exactly.
They're living and experiencing the difference.
Yeah.
And this is the important thing about the work that we do. And it's a good job we use the word work, because working on yourself is work. It is hard work, changing what is familiar, really getting to grips with the nitty gritty of who you are, what happened to you, who you want to be, and just changing your future, totally transforming yourself, which is possible, but it's work. And it's important to understand that it's work.
It's work. It's work. But I can't think of any work that's any higher purpose. A lot of people, we invest a lot of energy in other people, which I think is really great too, being an act of service. But it's really, I think, the highest thing we can do. Gandhi said, you be the change. It's like it's our own internal work that is going to shift. And I knew that work is going to shift the future generations, of my children's children, and
that's the point. Understanding as well that when we do this work on ourselves and with our children and for our children, it's not just for now. How they parent will be different, not because of how we parented, but because of the work that we did in healing the damage that we felt we had done. That ripple effect. And we don't even have to wait until they have children. It's who they are now in their lives is different if we do the work with them, if we do the work of apologizing and, as we can, fixing up what we did. It's so important, and people they miss it. They forget the impact they've had on their children, or they don't want to own it. They don't want to admit it. We all have big egos, and we have this thing about always being right. And that's the wonderful thing about being whole and complete. You really don't mind being wrong. You can see when you're wrong, or at least when people tell you, you can work it through without being offended, without needing to defend yourself all the time, and to be right whether you are or not. I'm happy to own when I'm wrong, when I've done wrong, when something's gone wrong. And that is a wonderful place to be as well, to not feel that offense, to not be afraid of criticism. It's a wonderful place to get to.
I remember that one time when my daughter, a few years ago, she was saying something, that I would have considered criticism. And she just looked at me. She stops and she's like, Mom. And I'm like, and she's like, you're not running away. You're not leaving. Because I couldn't even hear it. You know, it's like
Right.
I was so, because I still felt so broken within myself. You know, it's like
Yeah.
any amount was just like a, you know, dagger to me. And I just learned to be able to, once I became whole enough, to be able to just sit with whatever she's saying and have compassion.
And that's the joy of what the healing does. You
Yeah,
know, it stops all of that because the only reason you ever reacted like that was because your mind immediately went to, oh, here's that confirmation again. You know,
totally.
if you just took it as confirmation all the time of your old feelings and thoughts were correct. You
Yes.
know, well, you don't have those anymore, so
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. So
And if I
what
do,
is
I would call, if I did, I would call you.
oh me? So
I'd be
oh
like,
what
hold on, this one got me, Sarah. We got to go in. Let's go.
yeah. Yeah, I know. I do love it when I get your messages. It's always amusing. So, no, the work you do on yourself is inspirational. But so, and it's been wonderful to hear, you know, what you went through, where you came from, and where you are now, and this journey to becoming whole and complete.
Yeah.
So, what would you say? There's going to be lots of people listening who can relate to the kind of the broken and the diminished and the undermined and the trapped and helpless and useless. What would you say to them if they're in that situation feeling, especially if the medical profession has told them you'll always have this anxiety, you can't get over your complex post-trauma? We know we can. There's two of us here who've already done it. You know, it's ridiculous. So what would you say?
There are always options. There's always way out of anything, you know, of any situation, and just keep trusting yourself. And as long as you know that there has to be a way out, keep searching and looking and asking questions and feeling in whether that answer is correct or not. You know, when the doctor says that, like, is that really true? And really question, is that an option? And find someone. Now we have the internet. Back then I didn't have the internet. That you can Google, can you get over PTSD? You know,
Yeah,
can you get out? There's so much information available to us just right now online. Um, and just realize that I don't know of any situation or any condition that I haven't been able to get myself out of. But it does take, no one's going to come save you, right? And you can't expect someone to save you. You have to save yourself. And you've got to use whatever amount of energy and will that you have towards saving yourself. Yeah. And you can do it. You can get yourself out of any situation. I'm not saying it's not going to be hard and not going to be difficult, and you're going to have to put way more effort than anything you've ever put into, but there's no greater cause.
it's worth it. And I
Mm-hmm.
love what you said about asking questions because these days you don't even have to go anywhere. You know,
No.
some you can sit on Google and you can put into Google, why do I feel so bad about myself?
Yeah.
And it's going to come up with, sure, it's going to come up with a lot of information, but this is where you can ask your questions and sort through the answers
Yeah.
and say, well, does that apply to me? Is that what's happening to me? You
Yeah.
know, and it's going to bring up things that you haven't thought of. You know, why do I always feel as if I'm wrong? Why am I made to feel guilty? Why don't my needs matter? All of these things. Sure, you can go and talk to someone, but you, as a starting point, no one even needs to leave their house. People
No.
can do this as this podcast finishes. Ask the
Exactly.
questions that you've been asking yourself
Yeah.
about the things that are bothering you, and start somewhere. Choose to start. Choose to ask the questions. There's the first choice.
Yeah.
Choose to ask them in a way where you might get an answer, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. That was very powerful. You've certainly shared some wisdom there, and I'm sure a lot of people will be looking at this thinking, wow, there must be a way out for me. I
Yeah.
must be able to do something, or if I don't, I'm choosing not to. You
Yeah.
know,
There's,
that's my
there's a
choice.
way out. There's a way out. You got to look hard.
Yeah,
Sometimes you have to look harder than others, but there's always, always, from my experience, a way out. Yeah. And you got to get yourself out.
yeah, and it is up to you.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Well, and I know you run a course, don't you? You run some kind of personal development,
Well,
um,
I just wrote
spiritual
it. Yep.
intuition.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's called a live OS for a live operating system. And it's a radical upgrade in your human operating system.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so I just opened it up. I did a course. I did it as a beta with 25 women and had just incredible results. And now we're taking it online. I'm just now taking applications, and in 2 days we have over 400 applications in for the course. I know, which is really
Wow.
pretty amazing. 'Cause this was going to be to me like another test kind of beta, but wow, the demand's really there. I know that I know that you can change your life, and I've discovered somewhat of a way, a system, and I've just really went back and unpacked sort of some of the things I do. I talk about hypnotherapy in the course. I talk about lots of healing modalities, as well as a process for questioning your own thoughts and to get yourself unstuck. So
That's,
I just feel blessed. Again, I can't think of a greater honor to be able to share it.
yeah, and I think so many of us, once we've done our own healing, we see other people in the same situations, and we just want to help them. We want to show them
Yeah.
that there is a way, that this is just not necessary. You don't have to be here. You don't have to live like that. So
No.
we'll have to, well, I was going to say we'll have to share the link to your course in the notes, and of course we will, but it sounds like you've been inundated already. So we'll be filling up your next one. So
Yeah.
we'll have to do that for you.
Yeah, I was shocked. I was like, oh, I hope people, interested in it. And then I'm like, oh boy, okay. What do we
Oh.
do now? Yeah, so I was only going to I think we were taking 50 people, and we have over 400 today. So we'll see how that works out. But who knows how this is going to go. But what I am excited about is, again, people understanding that you can change whatever operating system. You can recode the way that we were coded, and we coded ourselves.
Yeah, so those neural pathways, they can definitely be changed,
Yeah.
as long as you do
Such
the
a
work.
fan of your work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you, Sarah. So fun.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and we will definitely put some links up. People can follow you and in touch with what you're doing, because I know you share a lot online for free. I know you share your experiences, so much of what you're going through, and that you are constantly out there growing yourself, and just being an inspiration to other people. So thank you so much for just sharing so much, and just encouraging people wherever they are at, to take steps and to help them understand that they have a choice. So thank you so
you're
much.
welcome. Thank you. What an honor for having me. Such a blessing.
So there you have it. What a great interview with Suzy Batiz today. And I know that she's incredibly busy, and I'm just so grateful to her for agreeing to come and share her story. And wherever you are at in your own journey, whatever you're experiencing, I just hope that there was something in what we shared today. And maybe for some of you, there'll even be that aha moment, that where you can relate to what Suzy said, and this is the moment where you understand, this is my chance, this is my time to reach out, this is my option here, this is my crossroads, and I have an opportunity to do something with the situation that I'm stuck in. And I don't know about you, but I just felt that Suzy just shared so much that was of incredible value, some really good lessons there that almost everyone can take something from. So I thought it was worth just spending just a few minutes just highlighting some of the things that she brought to the table today. And one of the things I really loved, and I did say this in the beginning, was when she talked about being whole and complete as a person. And that comes from when we understand who we are, when we love ourselves, we have respect for ourselves, we practice self-care, and understanding that real abundance in life comes from that relationship with yourself. And what was very interesting when Suzy spoke about that feeling of being whole and complete, it would have been so easy to think, well, it's okay for you, look at where you are, no wonder you're whole and complete. But then you hear about what she went through, and you can imagine the journey it then was to get from where she was to where she is now. And what I love about that is that I think there's such a problem these days. I know certainly as a hypnotherapist, with the work that I do, the trauma and abuse that I deal with, there is an inherent problem that people are told that it is not possible. It is not possible to totally recover from CPTSD or anxiety, from deep depression. And it gives the mind nowhere to go. And I think that so many people are in this situation where they've been told that they cannot recover. And I just think that aside from myself, I've got my own story, but Suzy is just such a good example of the fact that that is just not true. And to me, when people are told that they can't recover, they lose hope. Any hope turns to despair when you're looking at a dreadful situation and thinking, I will always be this way. And this is something that we need to change. And that's one of the things I loved about what Suzy shared, that she's just such an example of why and how that isn't true. And she wasn't anyone special. She says that herself. In fact, I'm going to quote to you one of the things she said. She said, I've got some notes here so I don't forget anything. Who could love me is how she thought about herself. I'm just a pile of shit. Basically. That's where she came from. Those are her words, not mine. She doesn't feel that way about herself anymore. But how many of us can relate to that? If you have abuse in your background, especially childhood abuse, whether it's sexual, physical, emotional, a combination of those, and it's created this blueprint where you've gone forward into your adult life and you're repeating these patterns, which is exactly what she and I talked about, then I'm sure that you can relate to what she said, and whether we think about it as not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy. I used to describe it for myself as self-loathing. But what she said, who could love me? I'm a pile of shit. And if she can take herself from that to where she is today, you saw her, this self-confident, vibrant, just oozing abundance and vitality and a love for life, a love for people, and a love for herself. And I just hope that for anyone who was listening today, you're really inspired, really encouraged, and you understand that success for her, what she talks about, she's apparently, I didn't know this, but she's just been named as by Forbes as one of the world's richest. I think she said the world or America. I'm not sure, but anyway, she's right up there. Self-made women. So money is no issue for her, but what she said was the most important thing to her is the abundance that she has within herself. That is when she really started to feel whole and complete. And she had the money first, and everything else has followed. So yeah, so some really good points there, and yeah, I think that was mostly what I wanted to share. And I love what she said about realizing that you choose, you have a choice. You're not responsible for what has happened to you up until now. You're not responsible for your situation, your circumstance, but from here you can choose. You have permission to choose. You have a choice. And she was very, very clear about that, the importance of choice. And that's actually a word that I use a lot with my own clients as well, that you get to decide. You have to decide that you are going to do something about this. Give yourself permission to be different, to live a different life, to receive something else. And she spoke about these decisions that you make from this unhealthy negative mindset, and then the way that those decisions will totally shift as you change and you create a healthier mind, you make and create healthier decisions for yourself. So if you got anything else from it, I'd love to hear your comments. But I think there was a world of gems in there, and I just hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to having many more guests like Suzy on the show. So thank you for your time. Enjoy it. And do let me know what you think. Thank you.